Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. So the case we have the team taking on this week is essentially a wrongful death suit that basically a skydiving company that basically a governor, his name is Whitfield, ended up dying. Obviously, the dude who runs the company named Walter also died trying to save him. And basically his wife Addison is, Whitfield's wife Addison is suing for a wrongful death suit. And this is a very particularly interesting case because now we have Liberty and Bull not on the same side this time, but on opposite sides, which Marissa was kind of like, wait, what? It's like, because like obviously they're proud of her and everything. Like she's kind of like, Bull and Marissa treat her like a daughter. So it's like they've seen her kind of grow up and kind of stand on her own, but now she's in opposition with Bull and everything, which she was like, oh yeah, at first, obviously, I was shocked to find out that you're on the other side of this, but it's like, she's like, hey, you know what? I'm still not going to let that happen, so let's do our best in this situation. He's like, yep, good luck. And she's like, well, why'd you have to say it like that? Say it like what? He's like, so adversarial. He's like, well, because we are adversaries. We are on different sides. She's like, okay. She's like, you're not going to get inside my head. It's like, well, the fact is you're acting like that makes it seem like I already did. And I just love that little back and forth. It got me giddy because you could see the excitement on Bull's face too. Obviously, he made it seem like Liberty wasn't the main reason why he took this case, but in fact she was, because it was all about seeing how, more so than anything, to see how far she could spread her wings on her own, which is what Marissa was like, oh, we shouldn't take this case because we should just kind of let her fly on her own, which, Bull kind of took that, but kind of added his own twist to it, which I'm sure in this particular case, Bull thought he was on the right side anyway, but still it was also an opportunity to test Liberty as well, which to me is like, the fact of the matter is I'm surprised she isn't just a member of the team. I'm like, because I figured Liberty would pop up a few times, which she did, she popped up a lot more than I thought she would. She's like the only person that they've dealt with on a more consistent basis. So I'm like, at this point, why not just make her a permanent part of the team? Make her kind of like, work side by side with Benny. But I guess it's kind of like, nah, it's once again kind of the situation. Just let her like spread her own wings. Like when the time comes, obviously work with her again just to make sure, see what she's capable of. But the fact is, she showed her stuff because when it came to the elimination process of people on the jury, because she learned from them, so she knew what kind of key questions to ask, because she kind of took their rule book and kind of made it her own, showing just how good she was. And even Bull was like, yeah, this is wow. The fact is that Liberty's doing this pretty good. And he even brings up the fact is, I think she's actually kind of taking this a little personal, because she was just kind of getting a little about it. Just every time, like anytime she makes a move, almost looking at Bull like, oh, see what I did there? I'm pretty awesome, aren't I? So even Bull comments on the fact is that it was interesting seeing that side of Liberty in this episode, especially because they tried to shift their perspective on the whole situation as like a situation of like, oh, obviously Walter, more specifically, Whitfield in this case was murdered, obviously. So, because obviously the wrong death suit falls on the skydiving company, saying that they had some kind of fault in this whole situation. But it's like, no, Walter checked those bags twice, 3 times each. He was very OCD about the whole situation. So it's something he's been doing for like 20 plus years. So he would have never missed the bags. So obviously it's like the bags were tampered with afterwards. So it's a situation where everything kind of points, they're trying to find different suspects because many things come up in the investigation. Like, for one, all the people that were there that were part of Whitfield's administration, his group and stuff like that, obviously all of them have gone off subsequently, got different jobs. Like, one of them is the new Connecticut governor. His name is Akins. And it seems like when it came to Whitfield's administration, like there was an FBI investigation into the fact of corruption and specifically bribes or stuff like that. So then it starts like, oh, maybe Akins is the one who killed Whitfield, obviously for his position as governor. Because at first they're making it seem like, oh, it's a power play situation, like, oh, he came there just to get his power and stuff like that. And it also deals with the fact is that, you end up later on finding out that his wife was having an affair with Akins' wife was having an affair with Whitfield, which Liberty took immediate offense to. I guess it's like the fact is that she believed, it's like, how can you just throw out someone's accusation like that without any hard proof evidence. It's like, I think it, like, more so than anything, it's like the fact that they didn't have any evidence and they said something like that, and now the jury's going to be tainted by that. It's like, especially probably because she looks at the situation as like, you haven't brought any evidence to kind of prove that he is, so until then he's innocent. So she really took offense to it, because it's like the fact, because she feels like Bull took on this case just to attack her. It's like, oh, you took this case just because you heard I was kind of taking on something on my own, and you wanted to kind of come here and just rub it in my face that basically you're the top dog, that I can't best you or something like that. I guess it's the mentality she kind of had. So she took it very personal, which she came back on the attack and kind of making it shift the perspective and be like, oh, maybe it was actually Walter who killed Whitfield, because when he was trying to save him, he's like, no, I can't let this happen. Which, to me, I heard that at the beginning, but then I was like, I figured he was saying that because he was maybe talking to someone else who might be watching the recording or something. I didn't know what at the time, but now I was thinking like, well, maybe he meant that for a different reason. I was like, maybe he had something to do with it, because obviously the entire episode was like very suspicious of Max, which even Marissa kind of felt it to a certain extent, because she's like, every move they make, Max is the most reluctant. He's not really on board with all their different strategies and stuff like that. Turns out the reason why is because he's actually the one that killed both of them, because he had such a problem with his brother Walter, because Walter had fired him, because it's like, oh yeah, the reason why this whole Whitfield situation happened is because he's making it seem like Walter had made it seem like, oh, the fact of the matter is you must have slipped up somewhere along the way with this whole process and didn't keep up the permits and stuff like that, which, you know, Max is like, no, I did my job. The fact is I dedicated so much of my life to him and this business, and he's just going to up and fire me like that, you know, because, I mean, as we see that, like, there was a bribing type of situation going on, so he was corrupt. So who's to say he didn't, you know, get paid off or pay off the right people to get that access? Because it was a whole property situation of like, he was owning the rights to the land that they're like, I don't know if necessarily land, but like where their business was running, like he kind of had rights over it, so they couldn't lease that place anymore. So it meant like their business was out. I mean, granted, when Akins came into the government, like the governor position, he ended up signing it so like they can actually keep their job. So it's actually thanks to him, and it's like, which is something Liberty brought up. It's like, oh, you're accusing the guy that actually helped you keep your job and your whole business in the first place by accusing him of murder. I mean, granted, at the time, Walter didn't know about the whole allegations of corruption. Like I said, that was like a secret FBI agents, FBI investigation. The only reason why they know about it now is because of Danny, which I'll get to that in a second. But it's kind of sad. I mean, because obviously Dylan, the main one behind all this, like, you know, this has kind of been her world for a while. Obviously, she kind of ran things with her dad and everything. It's like she lost her dad, and now her uncle is going to jail too, like for essentially killing her father and someone else. Because it's like her uncle was her rock during this whole situation, and it's like on top of that, now it's like, I relied on you, and now I find out you're the reason why my dad as well as someone else is dead. So, especially because it's like, for her, it's like, probably in her mind, it's like, she believed like, oh, her business had no fault in it, which technically it didn't, but now it's like, you know, the fault kind of lays on her uncle. So it's not the easiest thing to kind of be able to deal with. So, not, like I said, like, I was hoping it wasn't going to be like that, because part of me was thinking like, because this is the first time where it's a situation where it's like you've been working alongside the killer the entire time. Obviously, Bull figured it out and was able to kind of like make him write a confession like, oh yeah, you just wanted to blame your brother, and he's like kind of beating into him like, oh yeah, this is 100%, like the letter he's making him read, like closing statements being like, oh yeah, it's 100% my brother's fault, and he can't do that because he's like, because basically the entire time he gets up in defense anytime someone tries to blame his brother. It's like, no, my bro, this person's having these false accusations and kind of dragging my brother's name through the mud. And it's like, because every time he hears someone dragging his brother's name through the mud, I guess it constantly reminded him of the fact of what he did. And like I said, I was very suspicious from the very beginning. Side note, the actor who plays her Uncle Max also played, what's this, Scar? His name was spelled weird. It was like Scar, but with an F-E-E at the end. So I want to say Scarf, but it's like Scar from Luke Cage. It was like he was dirty cop in that situation. So like I automatically went into this like, please don't tell me you're a bad guy. And it turns out you're actually a bad guy. Like I said, like no matter his feelings for whatever, it doesn't justify what he did. You can understand his emotion and the reason why he would put so much time and effort into it. You can understand. But you can never, justify doing what he did, especially what he did to his niece. Now, she has no dad. And this whole situation put her dad's business at harm. So now it's like, not only would she have lost, not only did she lose her dad, but she could have lost the business too. Which Bull ended up talking to Addison about it. He's like, can you please not do this? Which Addison is like, you drug my husband's name through the mug, like ruined his legacy. Which is kind of to argue is like, well, the fact of the matter is the FBI was going to do it anyway. I mean, the reason why they backed down is because he was dead. So they're like, well, the main part of this investigation is done, because it's like, could have come after his staff, but the real person they were after was Whitfield anyway. But, you know, it's like that truth needed to come out, especially the fact is knowing that your husband was having an affair. Like, I mean, it's something I actually watched recently that kind of got in my head. The fact is, like, don't always speak so highly of the dead. If someone's an asshole, call them out for being an asshole. I mean, not always. Like, you know, obviously when someone passes away, you want to be a little kind. But if they, you know, it's just like, she should, at the very least, she deserved to know the truth that her husband was cheating on her. But at the same time, it's a situation where it is like, you know, is it a situation where you're better off not knowing the truth? So that's something to kind of, I believe you should keep in mind. So I am wondering, is there going to be any backlash for the governor Akins? Like obviously there was the whole corruption thing, but like I said, it was mainly aimed at Whitfield, so I don't know if that backlash is going to trickle down to the rest of them. Obviously, they all knew about it. The other two that were kind of a part of that administration were like, oh yeah, like we plead the fifth on this situation, so I don't know if there's going to be any backlash for him. Like I said, the FBI kind of dropped it because, you know, Whitfield was the main one behind it, and now that he's dead, there's no point in diving any deeper. But kind of going along those lines is, like I said, Liberty and Bull, at first I was worried that, you know, things weren't going to be good between them, but it's like, no, there are. Like I said, Bull admits the fact is that he just wanted to test and see what Liberty was capable of, and maybe he'll sneak in some of the trials that she has in the future just to continue to make sure that she's still keeping up, doing good work. And it's just like, the fact of the matter is, like, basically like all the other cases, it's like, we couldn't win this without you. And he's like, because the fact is, Liberty, you told me that you learned the biggest lesson today for me, and what was it? He's just like, how to win. So it was a situation of not just, it's a situation of kind of standing on her own 2 feet. The fact is of never backing down, because before, Liberty is very soft-spoken and very timid, but the fact of the matter is she stood up in a situation of like, no, she went on the offensive and attacked, and was able to, you know, in that sense, she ended up helping kind of reveal the whole situation. It's like, revealing the fact is that they all, who the killer was. I mean, kind of helped put Bull in the mindset to kind of figure it out. Which, I know some interesting things we found out. For one, we found out Chunk is afraid of heights because he was the one that didn't go to the, diving, because it was like, oh, we got to run through it, and everyone went except for Chunk. Danny and Cable were super hyped about jumping. I mean, Cable didn't like the fact that it had to be like a 4-hour class to get through it, but like they were super hyped about it. But it does seem like Bull had his problems, which he was like, nah, I don't have a problem with it, you know, because Danny's like, you're a pilot. How can you be afraid of, like, you know, the sky like this? And he's like, I'm not afraid of the sky. I just respect gravity, which is like, hey, I get behind you and Chunk, because truth be told, I'm pretty sure I brought this up before, like, in many different formats, but I have a fear of heights, so I can get behind that. It's like, skydiving seems awesome to me, but there is a fear in my head of like, man, something could go wrong with the chute. Later, Dylan kind of tells the Bull, like, oh, it's safer than cheerleading. He's like, yeah, safer than cheerleading, and does it himself, so it kind of worked out in that degree. But, 2 other storylines that kind of came up in this episode. One being Danny and the FBI agent, Rick, who is, once again, it came up with the other actor too, but like, I don't remember who's who, but I'm pretty sure he was Mike from Limitless. I mean, not Limitless. Yeah, Limitless. I don't know. I was thinking of something else at the time. I thought I got the title wrong. Nevertheless, obviously, once again, I bring it up. Mike wasn't his real name, but it's just the name Brian called him. But nevertheless, him and Danny, apparently Danny and Gabe broke up. Which she lied about it when she was talking to him. It's just like that little flirtatious relationship her and Rick have. And even Cable's like, yo, he totally likes you, because he asked about Gabe without you even like bringing it up in conversation. And then Cable was also the one that broke the news. Like, oh yeah, she was walking and said, oh yeah, Danny and Gabe are no longer together. And just continues to walk away. And Danny's like, why the hell would you do that? obviously they have the problems because Danny let, obviously that information about the case. She wasn't supposed to let that out, but she did, obviously for the trial purposes. But it's like they needed to. It was a last resort. I do wonder why didn't she give Rick, slipped right there. Why didn't she give him a heads up about the situation? It's like, I thought you would have. I thought Bull I guess she figured if she gave him a heads up, he wouldn't have been, the FBI would have been more hushed up about the information, and it would kind of make it inadmissible in the court, or the fact that she felt like Rick would have backed down. I'm not sure. But by the end of the episode, it does seem like they are good again, especially because it's like, yo, you want to go out, basically. Like I said, they have a very nice flirtatious relationship, so that's going to be interesting. Like I said, I'm sad that her and Gabe broke up, especially because the way that episode went to make it seem like, okay, her and Gabe are going good. But granted, they haven't brought it up subsequently since, so I guess we'll just see how it all works out. And then on the other side of things, we dive a little bit more into the case that Benny, U.S. attorney and people are looking into Benny about, because they would basically, I forgot that basically there was some shady business going on with the trial, essentially. So what happened is, in this case, it's a guy named Aiden Watkins. We're not 100% sure what he did, but later on it comes out, because the attorney general ends up talking to him, that basically new evidence had come out. Because it kind of got brought up in the episode. It's like, oh yeah, all these, people have different fears and stuff like that. And one of Benny's fears is the fear of failure, of getting the wrong guy. In this case, he might have gotten the wrong guy. That new DNA evidence comes up that'd be like, okay, this guy might have been innocent, and he was sent to prison for 9 years. His wife is remarried. That basically Benny's like, I might have ruined this guy's life. And now it's coming up that maybe obviously what's going to be coming up is trying to figure out whether or not there was some shady stuff that went on with that trial, maybe some planted evidence and stuff like that. So, it's going to be a situation where Benny's kind of going to be on trial, and I guess it's going to be Bull having to represent him. I mean, granted, Benny's kept his hush-hush, but now Chunk knows, so I'm sure Chunk's going to tell everyone else. Probably going to have Benny trying to tell Chunk not to tell anyone, but he's going to tell him anyway, because it's a very big deal. And now Bull's probably going to have to decide, is he going to work with Benny against this whole situation or not? Where is he going to stand on all this? Obviously, he's going to want to help Benny out. I'm very, very curious to see how this all plays out. Originally, I assumed this all had something to do with the case that Benny was part of, the case that made him go nah, I'm quitting, being a prosecutor, because the fact is that I don't believe this guy's guilty. I thought it was associated with that case, but this is a case where it's Benny 100% thought the dude was guilty, and now he's finding out, oh, he may be innocent. So actually the complete opposite of what I thought, so. I wonder will we ever cross paths with that particular case, the one where he's like, oh, I thought that particular case where he thought the person was innocent when everyone else was saying oh no, it was him, he's guilty. It's a situation of oh, just prosecuting people just to prosecute people, just to keep your numbers up, of being I have the largest number of prosecutions, even though this person may not be guilty, who cares, And that's kind of the mentality I think Benny, at the very least, people around him kind of had. So it's a mentality I feel like he shared too. So that's kind of why because even Chunk's kind of oh man, you look the same. And he's like, yeah, probably on the outside. He's on the inside, basically, he's not that same person anymore. All he cared about it. Whether he was, I'm thinking it seems like Benny was kind of saying back then he wasn't 100% all for justice, which he cared about just maybe at some point. But at that particular time, maybe justice kind of took a back seat to just being a good prosecutor and just getting people prosecuted, not being very good at his job, essentially. So I guess we'll have to wait till the next episode to kind of really dive more into this whole situation. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good